Hello, it's my pleasure to welcome you to episode 36, World Cities Days, Digital Transformation for Better Urban Life. My name is Eleanor Penvarley, Director Art Media Laboratory and co-founder of the Metaverse Council. I'm pleased to announce that this webinar forms part of the ITU Digital Transformation webinar series. This webinar will explore how digital transformation can help improve the adaptability and scalability of cities to facilitate the delivery of amenities while enhancing efficiency of operations and strengthening the backbone of cybersecurity architecture across all urban verticals, all in alignment with the Sustainable Development Goals. Before we delve into the heart of our discussions, please take note of how the session will run. All questions from the audience will be taken during the Q&A session after the presentations. Participants can submit their questions by typing into the Q&A window. The Q&A icon can be seen at the bottom of your screens. Please indicate the city and country you're connecting from. The webinar is being recorded and the recording will be made available after the event on the website. The presentation is made available on the website also. To begin today's webinar, I would now like to pass the floor to the ITU for the video message from Sezon Osan, Director Telecommunications Standardization Bureau.
To address these challenges, city administrators are turning to digital technologies to reshape how services are offered in the urban. By employing digital technologies, cities can increase efficiencies, economic development, sustainability, and life quality for inhabitants in urban areas. Demonstrating how cities are accelerating their recovery from COVID-19 and achieving the 2030 agenda for sustainable development at all levels. That is why the work on cities is high on our agenda. International standards developed in ITU help cities around the world to be more efficient, sustainable, and beneficial for their inhabitants. One of the key areas of the focus in this regard is the work of ITUT Study Group 20 on Internet of Things and smart cities and communities. Over its long history, the ITU has supported the development of many innovative technologies and activities. The U4SSC initiative is one such activity. ITU worked with other 19 UN partner agencies to create a platform to support cities in ensuring that their digital transformation initiative align with the SDGs.
Thank you, Onsan, for giving us a snapshot view of the ITU's activities related to digital transformation and urban development on the occasion of World Cities Day. These remarks set the stage for today's discussion. Once again, I would like to encourage the audience to type in any questions you have for us, and the panelists will do their best to answer them during the Q&A session after the discussion. We have a fantastic lineup of panelists for this webinar, so we will now move into session 1 on setting the stage for digital transformation in the urban ecosystem. I'd like to begin this session with introducing Non, Senior Expert in Smart City Promotion, Thailand's Digital Economy Promotion Agency.
Hi, everyone. Hi, so do I just start it just like that?
Yeah, please start your presentation.
Okay, got it. Okay, thank you so much. It's been a while since I used Zoom call because we, back from the pandemics and lots of things are back in the physical world. So I'm going to use my 10 minutes to talk to you about the kinds of concepts and processes that we have been working really hard to establish in Thailand with some success, and hopefully that we can get some comments and feedback from you in order to make it even better So I call this presentation a short one, actually, working backwards, which is the process whereby we flip the script from usually working from the solutions and all the way to the people, all to actually working at the pain points of the people and to the solutions. And the differences are quite massive, because when you started with the solutions and trying to kind of force that into people, usually you get a lot of backlashes, and you don't want that to happen to you. So in my presentations and in my work as a smart city expert, which I've been in the role for the past 5 years, I have been trying really hard to push this processes and of course the methods. First, I wanted to talk about my confession, actually. I think it's one of the best way to open up the discussions. So when I was appointed smart city expert of Thailand back in 2019, I have to admit that I didn't know much about smart cities, but again, whatever position is given to me, I take it and I'm willing to learn. And one thing that I was mistakenly naive about was the idea that if you have good intention and funding, you can build smart cities always. Boy, was I so wrong. I realized is that a lot of things were not as I planned. A lot of things were not as easy as it looked. So here are some examples that I look around the world and found out. So lots of cities that have good intention and money, when they put all those into technology, the results are quite catastrophic. In the cases like this, you have technology that people don't want to use because they don't know how to be capable of using them, because they don't have the capacities for it. And sometimes they don't even realize is that the smart poles or the 5G communication poles were any use to them, because they were not trained or given the awareness to actually understand how those elements and components of hardware might be useful to them. And in some cases, you have the supply side economy that drives most of the urban development. Just for a case like this, you are focusing, the cities in this case are focusing too much on building a new city. That eventually doesn't lead to an actual fulfillment of the demand, because the demand itself doesn't feel as though it was important enough for them to actually cope with the supply. So you ended up with a lot of buildings that are not being used, and it is a lot of waste in terms of macroeconomics. You are looking at the ideas that you are looking at the results of putting too much supply side economy into the processes that doesn't actually yield any results in a beneficial way. At the end, it leads to a lot of opportunity costs as a result. Or in some cases, you have a lot of good cities that are designed and were made to accommodate people with the best technologies, urban planning, urban development programs, and so on. But people don't like to live there for a long time, because the cities are just comfortable for the physical being, but they are not actually accommodating. In the cases like this, you have a city where the surveillance are extremely ubiquitous, that people don't feel as though they want to be part of the urban life in the cities, because they don't want to be watched all the time. So this is the kind of cases that usually happen when you have good intention and funding, cash, but you don't really understand what is it that you are trying to get at when it comes to meeting the demand of the citizens. And that's not all. You get cases like this whereby good intentions, good funding, good programs seems to all come together, but eventually it doesn't actually lead to good results, because there is a mismanagement in terms of operating business model, and of course the understandings of the physical spaces. In this case, in Singapore, lots of people are not actually wanting to use bicycles. You know, those of you who've been to Singapore know how hot it is, and if you're working in Singapore, you're probably working in the financial sector, whereby you would be wearing suits and ties to work every day. You don't want to be on your bike at the 35 degrees Celsius in the tropics and get sweaty once you get to your building without a shower. So there's a mismatch between business model, understanding of the behavioral structures of the people who live there, and of course, the eventual result is catastrophic. You have cases whereby a real problem is actually very clear. In this case, in San Francisco and LA, homelessness, because of the housing price that goes up really high, but people don't have access to them, so they ended up being on the streets. These are very, very important problems that are not being solved at the moment, because all the efforts are being put into working at the top echelon of the economic structure. Or in some cases, you have the ideas and the willingness to put PPP or public-private partnership into use, but then the communication with the people are not so clear. So people actually resent the ideas of having the private, working with the public without telling the people, pertaining to trust, which is one of the main issues when it comes to privacy concerns of the people. So at the end, it leads to the failure of the entire operations of the project. So even though I was quite naive at the beginning to think that funding and cash and intentions are good enough for smart city building, and I was wrong. I admitted that I even have done some projects that are not very useful because I thought this was a good recipe. So what is it that would be a good recipe then? So before we get to that, let's summarize this all together first. So I believe that these 6 cases, then many cities that are falling into the same categories of these cases are falling into one problem, which is the problem what I call a well-intentioned parents problems. So the perspectives of the parents are looking at the baby is very different from what the baby is looking at the parents, from what the benefits that he or she is getting from the parents. So in this case, the parents love the baby. So metaphorically, the cities are like parents. You have the opportunities to build, to design, to give, deliver things to the citizens. And the citizens in this case is the baby. But then again, the parents might be looking at things like, hey, I want my baby to grow up to become a veterinarian scientist. So I want to teach him the differences between animal anatomies from day one. But turns out the baby might grow up and get obsessed with colonoscopy because the things that he was looking at was actually from a different perspective as from the parent. So how do we avoid that? So we thinking in a lot of ways, and we recognize is that instead, if we do not think from the perspective of the parent, but instead we start with the baby, what is it that the baby demand? What kinds of resources that the cities could actually provide to the citizens that will meet their demands, and we work backwards towards the solutions. We might be able to get to the solutions that are cheaper, more efficient, and of course more productive. In this case, the parents might not even have to buy the mobile that have all the animals. If all they want was to get the babies to understand shapes and colors, it just could be balls, would be cheaper. But in this case, because the parents are looking at their own perspective, it looks good from their perspective. So these 6 cases are always similar in a way that they were trying so hard with good intention and good funding, but they're only looking at perspective from above, so they don't fulfill the demand of the citizens. So what we do, I actually have 3 principles that I would like to talk about, but I'm going to focus on the first one because it is the most important one. The smart cities is a citizen-centered approach to building livability, which means that smart city is not really about technology per se. Technology is just a solution. So if you start your way from technology, you have a technology that you happen to be obsessed with, and you try to force that into people, you are definitely going to be the well-intentioned parents who ended up not giving anything to the baby. But on the other hand, if you are looking at what the technology can do to the people, you start at the demand of the people, what would fulfill their needs, and that would actually lead to an actual solutions and the kinds of livability, well-beingness that is can be understood by different forms of KPIs, such as we're having technology that actually reduce accidents, have technology that actually leads to fewer people get admitted to the hospital because cardiovascular diseases. We have technology that allow people to actually live, work, and play and learn better. That would be the kind of thing that we are looking at. So this is my last slide. I visited a city called Aspern in the outskirts of Vienna last year. And I really like this picture because what it does is to tell you that smart city doesn't have to be a place where you see drones flying in the sky. You don't have to see robots walk the streets. It just have to be a smart cities whereby people are happy because their needs are fulfilled. In this case, these 2 kids really want to get home faster. So they don't want to get in the traffic jam with their parents, fighting with each other because they were having a problem. They'd rather get home, playing in a playground, having a good time, and learn about the nature. And because the traffic light systems are IoT and they're all connected with each other, they were able to actually accommodate the needs of the people to actually get themselves from point A to point B in a more efficient way. So what happened is that people get home faster, they're happier as a result, and that is a good KPI. Because when you start with the people, with the citizen needs, and work backward to the solutions, you always get the result that you wanted. And then there are so many other things in this picture, such as the air quality, which is very, very good because it have a system whereby if there are places where the pollutions or dust is very high, then the citizens get notified so that they don't walk into that area carelessly. And that's also reduced number of people get admitted to the hospital because of the diseases related to their cardiovascular structures. And there are also things that have to do with waste control and so on. So I think what I would like to leave at this point before I move on to the next sessions where we discuss is that what if we wanted to measure the smart cityness in a place, it shouldn't be about the number of technologies. It shouldn't be about the advancement of technology. It should rather be about the smiling faces of the citizens. In this case, I was there for only a few days, but I was already really happy because everything works and I didn't even have to carry my phones around with me. I could actually live, work, learn, and play in an urban spaces that was designed with technology in the background. Thank you.
Perfect. That's that was fascinating. Thank you. So we will move on to our next speaker, Vada, who's the Vice President of Invest India. Vada, hi.
Hey, thanks, Eleanor. How are you? And thank you so much for having me over here. It's really a pleasure to be addressing you all on this webinar today. And I'm here to share some experiences from the Indian context of smart cities. And allow me just a second to start sharing it through my slides. But actually the previous speaker did speak a little bit. He pointed out Kakinada, which is actually a developing smart city in India, and I'd love to share the model and the manner in which this is happening in India. So the concept of smart cities in India is I'd say fairly new in comparison to the rest of the world. So we are lucky in that sense to have drawn in a lot of the best practices which have been taking place in some of the other countries through the different partnerships that India has had, and drawn on from their learnings and failures to implement some of the things and build a very cohesive framework for our country. But what is actually very important to note is that the Indian government is so focused on developing good quality infrastructure, not just for its citizens, but also for all the foreign investors that are setting up in the country, that it is imperative for them to work on the charter of creating sustainable smart cities in the country. So what the country has actually done is they have laid out a roadmap for these smart cities. And at this point, I'll quickly maybe share a couple of quick slides with you all just to put it in perspective for everyone. Is my screen visible? Okay, awesome. So these smart cities, there are about 100 of them which have been identified. So actually, in India, so far by 2030, cities are expected to accommodate more than 60% of the urban population, and they will be contributing 70% to the GDP of the country, and also be contributing to 70% of the new employment which is going to be coming up in our country. We are a country of 1.4 billion people. Managing them in such a managing such a large population along with the resources of the land is imperative for sustainable growth of the country. And therefore the concept of smart cities is coming out, because there is a lot of challenges that we face due to the rapid urbanization that comes across because of the burgeoning middle class coming up, use of resources, etc. There's a change on the climate, the way that gets impacted. The energy mix changes. There is a fear and a challenge of inequitable growth, safety concerns, etc. Which come about with the urbanization that comes in. So what India has is an urban development program which has a fairly large budget allocation, proposed investment over a 5-year period for developing 100 smart cities in the country, and they would cut across different categories. It could be urban roads, transport, slum redevelopment, water supply, sewerage, trains, etc. Traffic, solid waste management actually being one really important one, street lighting, and other digitalization efforts as well. So there are different ways in which this whole plan is being formulated. Hundred cities have been shortlisted, and the different manners in which it's going to be thought. Retrofitting, or there is in some cities there is a greenfield development taking place. There is a redevelopment of certain cities taking place, and across all cities there is smart solutions, and especially digital smart solution, which are being introduced and put in the areas that it requires. And this model is being applied across these cities. 50 cities are being retrofitted, 5 are being worked across in a greenfield manner, etc. That's just a split of the cities. These are some of the huge opportunities. So what the government is doing is we are working very closely in the partnership with the private sector, learning and drawing from the experiences of global governments as well. So there are different places where there are G2G partnerships, and there are some places where there are PPP partnerships as well, to develop the smart cities in a sustainable manner. And it's a huge opportunity actually for governments and private sector together to look at areas which are listed out on this screen, whether it's renewable, traffic, waste management, etc., to come together and find common solutions, and tailor them to an Indian context. And the model is actually based around a lot of these. So that was a little bit, in a nutshell, that I wanted to share through slides what is really going on. I also want to touch upon a little bit on the other aspects of it, the digitalization aspects of it. What are the emerging trends that we are seeing over here, and especially in India? So, for example, IoT-enabled smart devices for controlling, monitoring urban facilities, etc., are extremely relevant and are a huge opportunity in the Indian context. There's a smart city called Bhopal, which is developing in central India, which has street poles for lighting have been redesigned as multi-application smart poles to accommodate, multi-operator telecom base stations, surveillance cameras, Wi-Fi hotspots, interactive digital signage for traffic. They also have environmental sensors and cloud-controlled EV charging as well. So, this is one clear example which is happening in a small city of Bhopal. And let me tell you, Bhopal is not a tier 1 city in India. Bhopal is actually a tier 2 city. And for such solutions to be developed and being implemented in this place are actually a great positive signal for us to see about the rapid change and transformation that is happening in our country. So we are slowly trying to learn and draw these solutions, and also offer our knowledge and to other countries and other people in the ecosystem as well. Then we have a country such as Surat, which is developing very intelligent urban mobility and transportation networks. It's a huge priority for us as well. They have smart traffic management systems which are being developed in multiple cities. But I'll give you the example of Surat, which is implementing an integrated system to manage a diverse set of transportation needs for the city, and a very intelligent transport and transit management system has been developed to reduce the operational costs and also maintain the service levels over here. So Surat actually is not even a tier 2 city. It's a tier 3 city in India. It's actually the hub for all diamond mining and production. Surat city supplies 90% of the world's diamonds from India. And they are working towards making themselves a smart city. They're also coming up with smart buildings, with green building certifications. There's a smart energy chain being introduced as a long-term solution for the energy demands which are coming up. The smart energy chain relies on renewable energy sources such as wind and solar. India, in any case, inherently has a lot of potential for solar power because of the large amount of land and temperatures over here. So this system actually can transmit decentralized, clean, and sustainable energy to every part of the area through an intelligent digital-based system. So, digitalization is actually being implemented in every different part of the smart city solution. I'll touch upon one last maybe solution where digitalization is being utilized in a very effective way, in a very different manner, is disaster response. So there is a lot of preparation for disaster management and disaster response in India. We are a country which has different parts, which are coastal areas which are prone to tsunamis, central areas which are prone to earthquakes, and being prepared for disaster response emergencies is very essential for having a smart city being developed. So there is a city called Vizag in southern India, which has 50, public addressing systems and variable messaging display boards, which have been set up in a smart city, in a digitalization fashion for dissemination of information during emergency situations. So there are smart city centers which have been set up within the city. They have a technological backing behind them. They also ensure safety of women on the streets. They, pass on information regarding the environment to the people over there, and pass on this information regarding any emergencies due to which are related to climate or anything else as well, to better prepare the citizens in the city for emergencies and disaster, and how all of these translate for people are they get improved services, they have better mobility systems in place, they have a secure and safe system, in terms of surveillance, etc., for themselves. There is scope for more energy efficiency, and especially as we work towards, being a more sustainable economy, we look at energy efficiency and environmental sustainability together. And combined with that, it introduces a brand new plethora of economic opportunities for companies and for people who are going to be engaged in that economic, activity as well, in this system. And India has put together a unique system, as I shared, of having a very collaborative approach for putting this into place into different cities. And there are multiple projects and opportunities across these 100 cities which are available for companies to take advantage of. And there are governments partnering on it, companies partnering on it. And we are seeing a lot of success coming out of this collaborative approach to jointly, put together an economic opportunity and, utilize the benefits of it in a win-win sort of a fashion. So I hope I was, able to share some good practices in the Indian context, and happy to, address any questions after this. Thank you, Eleanor. Back to you.
Thank you. Yeah, no, that was fascinating to listen to. As you prompted there, please keep putting the questions in the Q&A box. I've seen a few come in. These will all be addressed after we have our presentations. So without further ado, I will pass over to Pontus, who is the Programme Officer at UN Habitat.
Thanks a lot. Very nice to be here. Let me see if I can share some slides. Did that work? Oh no, I have to press share. Did that work?
Yes, that's worked.
Brilliant. Full screen as well. All right, now it's full screen as well. So, yeah, my name is Pontus Westerberg, and I lead UN Habitat's work on smart cities. For those of you who don't know us, UN Habitat is the UN Agency for Sustainable Cities. We work all over the world on issues to do with sustainable urbanization. So, looking at the title of this webinar here, it's really about digital transformation on the one hand, and better urban life on the other hand. And thinking about what is a good urban life, what is good quality of urban life, and I think that we know what that is. it's about affordable and quality housing. It's about public transport and other ways of being able to move around in the city in a good way. It's about public space. It's about good urban planning and a good urban environment. It's about resilience, and I think also about technology, about having the right kind of applications and tools to be able to make sense of the city. And it's not only, this isn't just coming from me. This is coming from the Sustainable Development Goals, and particularly Sustainable Development Goal number 11 on making cities and human settlements inclusive, safe, resilient, and sustainable. So we know what are sustainable cities, but we also know that many, if not most, of our cities are not sustainable. Cities account for about 80% of the world's carbon emissions, and we have about 1 billion people across the world who are living in informal settlements. Then I was trying to figure out then digital transformation and urban quality of life. So I had a little fun and I put it into Google earlier today, and these are the kind of images that come up when you Google that. I encourage you to do it. You can Google also smart city and related kind of terms, and maybe it's a bit of a silly exercise, but I think it illustrates something. And what I think these kind of images illustrate is that very often digital transformation of cities focuses on the technology and not about the actual good city, if you like. So here, for example, I don't know which city is. I apologize if it's your city, but the image to me is kind of illustrating a massive highway and massive high-rises. It's not really identifying those things that we have all agreed make up a sustainable city. And then it puts some technology, some sensors, some cloud services, some apps, some Wi-Fi, etc., kind of on top of it. And there are hundreds of these kind of images. And I think that this is a bit of a problem. I think that for digital transformation to contribute to a good quality of life, we need to think both about, let's say, good digital transformation and good urbanism, and we need to put those things together. We can't focus only on the technology. I think we can't only focus on the urbanism, but these together make up what we at UN Habitat like to call a people-centered smart city. And people-centered smart cities are cities that use technology and innovation to make life better for the residents. And it really means not just kind of putting a sensor network or putting in place a city data platform or something similar, but actually really thinking about how is this technology helping us achieve those other goals, like improving the urban environment, providing affordable housing, or ensuring that we have good urban planning and design. And then, of course, there are a couple of other really important things that we shouldn't forget, which is human rights. I think we see way too often in digital transformation projects in cities being about control of citizens and not about enabling residents. And of course, we still have a digital divide, and we need to really work to overcome that. Just a few things then that are happening kind of within the UN on this topic. One is the United for Smart Sustainable Cities platform, which was mentioned also in the introduction. It's a platform that is made up of 19 UN agencies. It's co-led by ITU, UN Habitat, and the UN Economic Commission for Europe. And there are loads of different materials on there, different working groups, different thematic groups. There's one which is called Enabling People-Centered Cities Through Digital Transformation. And there's loads of material. I just put a few few examples here, but there's lots of really good stuff here. So I kind of encourage you to go and have a look at the U4SSE, as we call it, U4SSE online platform. There's also UN Habitat under our People-Centered Smart Cities program, which I lead. We have developed a lot of different kinds of materials in this topic around the digital divide, around digital public infrastructure, around capacity for people-centered smart cities, etc., etc. So there's lots of material out there that I encourage you to have a look at. And then also this is really important. It's kind of new. So earlier this year, the UN member states adopted a resolution which calls for UN Habitat to lead a global consultative process to develop what they call international guidelines on people-centered smart cities. So these international guidelines would be guidance from all the UN member states on how to put in place smart cities which are more people-centered. The idea is that these guidelines will be ready in June 2025, and that they can then be used by all the member states to, or as they're developing their own national and local smart city plans, charters, strategies, regulations, etc. We're in the process right now of constituting an expert group, an expert working group. This will meet very regularly over the next 2 years, and this group will be the one that will be drafting these guidelines, and then supporting this expert working group. There will be a whole raft of different regional, thematic, and substantive consultations. With that, I will end. Thank you very much.
Perfect. Thank you, Pontus. Once again, fascinating presentation. And finally, I will pass over to Hansen, futurist at the Copenhagen Institute for Future Studies, who is here to give you a little introduction to what the Institute is.
Yes, and I will actually share just 5 slides, Eleanor, just to show it on the screen as well. Okay. So, I'll put it up here. Yes. So thank you for having me. I will represent the Copenhagen Institute for Future Studies today, and also representing the future, because I think that's what we do. We're quite an old institute trying to be the representatives for the long-term thinking. And I think especially talking smart cities and development of smart cities, I think we have a need for looking into the future and making a language about how we will create the cities. So our mission is actually just to reduce complexity, reduce short-termism, and create a language about that. And how do we do that? And basically, we are looking into megatrends. We have a lot of tools, but I think especially with the cities, there's so many megatrends that we need to address. Which direction are they moving? How can we address them? And most importantly, how can we address all the uncertainties that is in those megatrends we are seeing? I've been working a lot with especially a huge city in a Western perspective. I mean, we're seeing an aging population. We're seeing more wealthy cities that we need to find a way to navigate. How will we organize our cities? Who should they? I think it's very interesting, Pontus, that you were talking about just before. I mean, for cities to have better cities, I could ask. Better cities for who? I mean, would it be a better city for the aging population, the seniors? Would it be a better city for the kids? Would it be a better city for the tourism, for tourists, and so on? So I think there's a lot of uncertainties in play when we're talking better cities, and we need to address them. We need to articulate them, and we need to get a language about how to talk about it. And of course, with the digital aspects of the cities at the moment, there's so many uncertainties, especially with artificial intelligence. How do we lean into it? How do we start it? How do we just get a discussion about what will it do for our cities on the short term, but also on a longer term perspective? I think there's so many discussion we need to start here. The sooner the better. And what will it be? And I think that that is actually some of the most important issues that I think we need to address today. Because one thing is what is the possible futures that we are going to look into on a global scale? What is the plausible futures for the cities of the future? And of course, what is the preferable futures? And preferable future for a city in Europe doesn't mean the same for a city in Latin America or in India or in the US. So I think we need to talk about it's basically a value question that we need to talk about, and we need to structure this debate about how to lean into these future cities that we're looking into, and especially on the tech side. In our perspective, I think it's not so important for us to predict the future. We don't have a crystal ball, but I think it's rather important to be prepared for different futures, for possible futures, and allow ourselves to lean into, especially into the digitalization part, lean into different possible futures, and be able to choose the one that we are actually working against. So this exercise of putting time into be prepared for different futures is so important, and unfortunately that's a part of decision making nowadays that we don't put enough energy and money into. So I think definitely that's a much needed aspect. And then I'll just have my last slide with Ludwig Wittgenstein, because I think every presentation should talk about Ludwig Wittgenstein. And he says that the limit of my language means the limit of my world. And what I basically mean by that, and what he also meant by that, was that we need to create a language. We don't have to agree about everything. We can have different values. We can have different views of how to address and to implement different technologies. How fast should we do it? In Europe, I've been working quite a lot with the European Commission of some of the work with the metaverse and Web4 and AI, and the European Commission have a different view of how to implement and regulate AI than they have in the US and the rest of the world, and that's good. But we need to create a language about what kind of cities that we are wishing for in the future and how we can move in the preferable direction. So I hope to be that part in the end discussion that will take account of the future and have the future into a larger role that the future have today, because we are looking into a lot of problems and a lot of challenges and a lot of drivers and blockers that we need to attend on the short-term basis, but we also need to put ourselves and allow ourselves to have this long-term perspective on the discussion we're having here. So by that, I will give the word back to you, Elena.
Thank you. Great little presentation. Ending with a lovely quote as well. I always like that. So we will now direct the floor over to our Q&A section. I've seen a few questions come in, and one of them has already been answered because it was kind of an administration question, but I'll put that on the floor in case anyone's missed it. If you wish to see any of the slides that have been presented on the panel today, these will be available, including the recording, after the webinar on the webinar's webpage, which is, we will link in the kind of event space. So over to the questions itself. I will read them out, and if they're not directed at a specific panelist, any panelist who wants to jump in is more than welcome to. So the first one came in during Non's section, and it's the question, what exactly is happiness metric? It's mentioned widely, but sounds quite biased. Could you give us a little insight into that, Non?
Well, sure. Well, I mean, the only reason why I said happiness metrics or my face smiling in the picture was because I wanted to get your attention. And I did. So kudos to me. Well, you're right. It's definitely subjective when you think about what does it mean to be happy. For us, we set KPI both on the quantitative side and the qualitative side. Of course, at the end of the day, we want equality because people understand quality better than quantity. So we want to see smiling faces. We want to see people being happy. But what does it mean by that? For us, we have 7 domains of happiness, right? We start with the environment. So if we can get the number of people who are getting admitted to the hospital down because the air quality and water quality are better, then we achieve the metrics, right? And then we have things like smart economy. If we can raise the income and living standards that is pertain to gross domestic product to a level whereby people can live comfortably. I mean, that would be the KPI that we use from the quantitative side. In terms of mobility, if we can actually reduce the accidents on the roads, we can reduce the congestions that could be measured by the time that people spend on the roads, as well as reducing emissions. That would be the metrics for smart mobilities. And for the smart people, if we can increase the so-called digital literacy, that in the entire spectrum, not just people who are able to use digital means and methods effectively, but also people who otherwise would be tricked and cheated on the internet. And we see a lot of those these days because internet is up for grabs. Everybody get involved, can also get tricked and all kinds of things. So if you can get people to understand the meaning of digital security, cybersecurity, trust, personal data, information security, and that would be part of the smart people domain. And of course, we have smart living, where we think about the access to healthcare, access to public health, access to telemedicines, and of course, the access to the ability to share their health data with the relevant authorities and hospitals who can actually help them in times of need. And in terms of the smart governance, we definitely want to increase 3 things, such as transparency among the people who are working, and of course, the citizens involved in the process. Transparency breeds trust and begets trust and begets all kinds of things that are useful to the governance of the city as a whole. We also want to increase the speed. We want it to be fast. We want it to be fulfilling people really quickly, and of course, we want to be able to increase the level of inclusivity so that people get access better to the means that they need in order to get access to public services. And of course, last but not least, smart energy. We might not be able to achieve the renewable energies goals as quickly because of so many factors we have in the world today, but we can definitely reduce the use of non-renewable, and that can start with not consuming too much energy, which we can use different means to actually increases the ability for people to not having to use too much of the non-renewable, and even if we don't have not renewable yet, we can actually do that quite easily. So yeah, I mean, you're right. The question is an awesome one. You actually touch on the very important things that at the end of the day, even though happiness is what we need to be able to have a quantitative measurements of what is it that we wanted to get at. And for us, the KPIs is always the livabilities, which can be measured quantitatively as well.
Yes, perfect. It's a great answer to that question. The next question I will present to any panelist who wishes to ask it, because it is not directed to anyone in particular. So since the topic of digital transformation and future considerations, do you have an idea on how much effort is directed towards equipping the next generation of planners of these?
Can I try this one?
Go ahead, Pontus. Wonderful.
I guess with planners, it's meant urban planners, and I think that's not enough. I would say. I think that we need a kind of new profession, which is someone who really understands urban planning and architecture, but also understands digital. And it's like 2 kind of separate professions in a sense. Like we have a bunch of people who've studied computer science, we have a bunch of people who've studied urban planning, but not enough people who kind of studied both. And I see that there are some new master's degrees and postgraduate courses in smart cities, etc. But I think that what we need is to bring much more data science, computer science, etc. into our more traditional courses on urbanism, urban planning, architecture, etc. Thanks.
For sure. Wonderful. And the second half of this question is digital transformation also projecting and finding solutions for waste that is produced by fast changing technology hardware due to these digital transformations that are occurring within urban environments? Vada? You're on mute, sorry.
Oh, sorry. Yes, definitely. I think the transformation of cities into smart cities and in introducing all these digital solutions also comes with it with all kinds of waste management regulations around it as well, including those for all the digital solutions which are going to be placed. And I do feel, however, that this is a challenge. This is a problem. E-waste management, e-waste, is a global problem. I still feel that it is, e-waste collection and management is happening in a fairly informal way. And while different governments are putting regulations around it, including the Indian government, which has an e-waste regulation in place for the amount of digitalization, and we're actually one of the hubs for a lot of the digital technologies which are being developed in India. And yet there is a little bit of a disconnect in it being organized and happening in a slightly more formal fashion to make it more sustainable. And I think the world is working towards it. I think there is progress in that direction, and it should happen.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you. And now I have a question directed to Non. In building a smart city based on citizens' demand, how can we deal with the cultural resistance of citizens in the population?
I love the questions. If I could give you a reward right now, I would give that to you. Certainly, we definitely treasure the participation from the citizens. And we believe that there are three things that are important when building smart city. Of course, we need hardware. We need an actual equipment that could actually make the city smarter, which can range from computers all the way to street lights and smart poles and things that are actually needed in the physical world to actually collect data, and therefore using so that we can use the data for the betterment of the society. And of course, we need software. It's also very important these days. And software these days also includes cloud computing, things that you don't see in the CD-ROM anymore, but it's somewhere. But you don't have to know where they are, but they are actually helping your cities getting analyzed, data in your city getting analyzed, and therefore being able to transform your city for the better. And the third part is the people's where. You need people who understands that this efforts is not just for the public to do, not for the private to help, but it's actually the people public-private partnerships. So in many cities that we have been working rigorously with, we are building up the so-called smart city officers. So the staff who work for the government, we training them quite excessively, actually, to train them to become smart city officers. So they have to be trained in order to understand the kinds of things that we talk about when we talk about smart cities, the concepts, the ideas, the techniques, and they have to be able to practice it in real life. And with that, we also have smart city explorers. We call them Smart City X. These are citizens who actually feel engaged enough, who wanted to be part of the building of smart cities. So we train them to propagate and to advertise, and of course to promote the idea of smart cities. Again, we don't believe that digital is everything. Digital is just a tool. So it's like you have a hammer. If you only have a hammer, every problem will be a nail because you only have one tool. But if you have a toolboxes that include all kinds of tools, you can actually pick and choose the right tool for the right problem. So we training smart city explorers, and these could be somebody as young as those who are in middle schools. Actually, we training many of them, and they love their jobs. They love to be Smart City X. That's what we call it, because it sounds kind of cool with the letter X on it. And we also train Smart City explorers who are elderly citizens who retire, have a lot of time in their hands, and they also wanted to help out as well. So the Smart City officers, the Smart City explorers, these are the tools that we are building in the domain of people's where. Again, I just want to show you this quickly. I'm not sure you can see it. In my back, it says Smart City officers. We actually train these guys, and once we completed the 60 hours of training these guys, we give them the jacket so that they can go around the cities and then helping other people. So there are things that we use, not only the actual technical capacity buildings, but also psychologies of gamifications that make people want to feel more engaged.
Thank you. Then the last question I found on the Q&A panel itself was what participation metrics can be used when gathering information from citizens and feedback from those schemes. Do you use citizens' assemblies, or are there other ways that we can do this?
We use it as a small little applications that is built into messenger messenger software called Line, which is just like WhatsApp or Facebook messengers or Instagram messengers, but it's the most popular app in Thailand. So we built a small little app. The reason we do that is because we don't want people to download another app, because nobody want to download a new app. So we built a small little mini program into an existing platform that 90% of Thai people are using already. And it's just so light because it's cloud-based that even if your phone is 5 years, 6 years old, you can even use it. So with that, we actually measure the interactivities between the citizens and the cities. When they have problems, they're sending it to us. We extract metadata so that we know exactly where the problems are, so that we can solve them quite quickly. And we also measure the time that is used by the staff to respond to the problems, so that we know the efficiencies of the staff in terms of responding to the problems. And if the time is too long, then we know that we have to retrain our smart city officers to be able to respond to the problem quicker. If the time is not too short, not too long, it means that we haven't included that in the database, because if it already included in the database, we can use our AI systems, which is large language model we're using at the moment, to find the right information quickly. So we're trying to find the right methods in order to help solve the problem. So the metrics that we use are, as I mentioned, transparency. Do people feel that the kinds of interactivity that they have is transparent, and that can be measured by their feedback, by their level of satisfaction? Because every time problem gets solved, they get to give stars to the staff who solve the problems. We also measure inclusivities. We look at the age range of people who actually access our applications. Is it inclusive of everybody in the society? If it's not, we have to train our smart city officers. We have to retrain them or train them again in order to make sure that they are able to get access to those services. And we also wanted to make sure that overall the speed have to be fast enough so that people don't feel left out, because the best way to get people to ignore your programs is to make them feel as though they are being neglected. We don't want to do that. So we have to be able to use all kinds of tools and services and people sometimes in order to, staff sometimes, to respond to problems very quickly. So we use gamification. So the staff who can actually solve problems for the citizens faster get extra stars, and at the end, that would be their means of promotion. So we gamify the entire experience of not only the citizens and but also the staff, in order to actually help the city better.
Thank you. Perfect. And I'm going to have to close it off there, because otherwise we're going to run over too much. It was a fascinating discussion, as everyone in the comments seems to be reiterating on there. So I just want to move on to the very final part of the webinar, and I'd like to give the floor to Ms. Christina Boetti, Councillor of the ITU Focal Point on Smart Sustainable Cities.
Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, as we conclude today's webinar, I would like to extend our deepest gratitude to Mr. Seiza Noe, Director of the Telecommunications Standardization Bureau, for his insightful opening remarks. I would like also to thank our moderators, the esteemed panelists, and every participant for their valuable contribution. On this World City Day, we explore the potential of digital transformation and the metaverse to combat the pressing challenges faced by urban environments. These challenges include urban sprawl, pollution, limited resources, waste management, and housing issues, just to name a few. Our discussions have highlighted that digital transformation remains a beacon of hope, offering innovative and effective opportunities to enhance sustainability, resilience, and livability of our cities. We have also discussed how effective implementation of digital transformation can improve the adaptability and scalability of cities and communities, streamline service deliverable, enhancing operational efficiency, and strengthening cybersecurity of digital infrastructure. It is important to remember that the essence of the digital revolution is to leverage technology to enhance the quality of life for all inhabitants, in line with the objectives of the Sustainable Development Goals. As we conclude, I encourage you to carry the insights from this webinar into your respective fields. I would like also to take an opportunity to encourage you to join the ITU's activities, in particular, to join the ITU focus group on metaverse, which is open to all and is carrying out important work that will help to shape the metaverse for all. Let us continue to explore the potential of digital transformation in creating more efficient, resilient, and equitable cities and communities. I invite you to visit the ITU's website for more opportunities to engage in discussions, knowledge sharing in the field of digital transformation and the metaverse. Our collective efforts towards creating smart, sustainable cities and communities is crucial. Thank you very much for your attention, and I look forward to our continuous discussion on this important topic.
Thank you, Christina. And I would like to also reiterate this and take the opportunity myself to thank our distinguished panelists for talking us through these enlightening discussions, which we believe will be the cornerstone of future standards to work on this topic. Before we conclude this episode, please note that the ITU's Digital Transformation webinar series will continue to hold episodes, and I'd like to invite you to join our future sessions as well. Thank you for today.